Yo, welcome in. I'm Sweet Phil. So I'm primarily a Diablo 2 player, now Diablo 2 Resurrected, and this is not a first reaction type video. I'm kind of more of a person that kind of takes in information and then kind of forms my opinions after. It's not just an initial like type of reaction. So I'm gonna go ahead through, and it's gonna be important for you to hear the things I say, and I'm gonna give you my opinions on the different topics here, the parts of it that are important. So let's jump right into it, and of course hit the like button and subscribe up, right?
The visceral combat in D3 is certainly the foundation of our combat model for D4. So when we think about that model, we looked at, well, where are things where we want to adjust from that sort of baseline? And so we wanted to make combat feel a little bit more intentional, add a little bit more stakes, and increase the clarity of the battlefield so that you feel like you can see, because if you can't see what decisions you're making or what monsters are doing, then it's hard to feel like you're making important decisions. You have to get that feedback, right? You know, it's been really useful to have beta tests.
That is very important. The battlefield clarity, the first very important thing that they said that I think is a good thing to focus on. You don't want it to turn into just a completely random button masher, attack, 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 until everything's gone. You actually want to be able to see each individual monster and actually be able to target and actually make strategic decisions. Hey, I'm going to go here. Hey, I'm going to go there. You don't want the entire screen just to be a big mishmash of different random colors and motions and swirls and things like that. So that's the first thing that I think is important here, that I don't know until you actually play it if they nailed it right, but at least they're focusing on nailing one of the things correctly.
Alpha test that allows us to really dial in that threshold where the combat doesn't feel so slow that it's not capturing that feeling of momentum and that power fantasy and being a barbarian and jumping on demons and throwing them off cliffs.
That's another important thing. It kind of goes along with the battlefield clarity, that the speed of like the attacks and stuff, if everything on the screen's moving so fast, you kind of lose that sense that you're actually fully in control. That kind of leads more towards that button masher type mentality, which we don't necessarily want, but you don't want it to be so slow that it's kind of boring almost. So you want it to be kind of fast paced, but still within the realm of being able to strategize and tell exactly what you're doing.
But that you feel like you have some stakes and that you're making decisions that matter on the battlefield. They're tactical decisions. We've got the evade skill that factors into that, so you can move around the battlefield. You know that you have that available. We can design
evade skill, very interesting, by the way.
Counters and things that use that mechanic. And we feel like we've got it in a pretty good spot at this point. It's feeling fast. It's feeling like there's momentum, but there's still choices, and we're continuing to dial that in as we get closer to launch.
I think part of it is like it feels more grounded, right? Like one of the things you don't see are the blue, you know, of the sort of there's like the champion color code and the elite color code. Like they're not glowing yellow or glowing blue. Like everything's sort of grounded in the world, and so.
This is, in my opinion, is actually a bad thing coming from Diablo 2. The champions, that's how you specifically can target the champions to get more experience, to get more loot and stuff like that, and they're not going to be able to be seen like readily. I guess maybe if you're on PC, you have to hover over every single individual monster, be able to tell which one is the champion. But sometimes this can be an incredibly important strategic maybe advantage in the battle against the champion packs and stuff like that. Maybe you see all these monsters that are fanaticized, or they have might, or there's a conviction aura out there that's knocking down your resistance, and you want to go find that champion, take that champion out first to eliminate that aura or something like that. That way you can have an advantage, or not have a disadvantage, I should say, against the other monsters. Apparently in Diablo 4, there's not going to be any of that. There's not going to be any color coding. There's not going to be any shine or glow or nothing to distinguish champion monsters from any of the other monsters. In my opinion, even though they do want to make this look as realistic as possible, and the game looks pretty good, I do appreciate realisticness, I guess, but this is a fantasy game, and it is a game after all, so there's some things you got to do that aren't going to be 100% realistic. Like, we're fighting orcs and goatmen and wisps and ghosts and skeletons and stuff. This is not 100% real life. I think that they should color code the champions and stuff like that the way that it is in Diablo 2 at least, but we'll see fully later, I guess, how they're going to handle that. But if it's not color coded and you literally can't tell them apart from any other monster, I think that's a mistake personally.
I think it feels different in that way, that it feels more grounded. Even the visual effects like that they've done is they feel a little less high fantasy and a little bit more kind of realistic and in the world, and especially the elemental stuff. And
less high fantasy, I think, is good. But
as a non-designer, I find it really, listening to the conversations, you know, things like time to kill is really interesting to me. The notion of, okay, in this beta, it took this long to kill these many monsters, and that feels too slow, and so we made these adjustments, and now our time to kill is this, and so it's very, in my mind, there's Joe's back there with a dial going like, turn it up, turn it down until we find it right. But it's been something that there's a constant conversation around, again, because again, Diablo is a power fantasy, and so if it feels too arduous and too slow and too laborious, they feel like, oh, they're just meat sacks of hit points, and it's not fun to kill things. And if they're too fast, then you're just like, everything's made of paper, and it doesn't matter, my strength doesn't matter. And so it really is about dialing it in to finding where you go, like, that should be challenging.
Not a crazy amount to add to that one, but the time to kill speed, I think, is actually kind of a very important one for casual players. You know, nobody wants, even people who are used to grinding away at Diablo 2 like myself, used to things taking forever and ever, and they like the grind and stuff like that. It is probably better for pretty much everyone all around if you're not just grinding away on each individual monster trying to kill it. You don't want things to take too long, but you don't want it to be too easy where you're just walking through the entire game. So obviously that's a pretty obvious one, and he pretty much everything he said nailed exactly what you need to say about it. You want to dial that in exactly where you need it.
That should be threatening, but I should also feel really strong in this moment against this type of enemy. And so that's what Joe and the systems teams have been doing a great job of finding that sort of sweet spot in the game.
Yeah, you know, you mentioned how elites in Diablo 4 don't have a color coding. It's been really interesting for us to identify areas where we can ground the monsters more in the world, and then also identify where there are things where it's really important to have clear communication, right? So for example, there was a point where when monsters were hiding behind a doorway or a pillar or something, it's certainly more grounded to not have any information about that. But it also turns out to be very frustrating. And so, you know, we've you know, speaking to that, kind of dialing it in, figuring out, you know, where we need to do monster highlighting for clarity so that the player has battlefield information to know what kind of decisions to make, and where we need to ground the monsters in the world so you get that feeling of atmosphere. You feel like you're in a world that's dangerous and scary and there's unpredictability.
Well, hopefully that last statement there, he said he wants to add things to so that people have the information they need on the battlefield in order to have their strategy. Hopefully they can kind of take that logic and kind of do what I said and just go ahead and like at least color code the champions and, you know, give yourself some kind of information with different like auras and colors and stuff like that in order to tell what exactly is going on. Because if they try to make it too realistic, it actually just makes the game less fun. Sometimes people don't actually appreciate things that are 100% realistic. They would rather have them just more intuitive and more fun and more betterness. I know that's not a real word, but I just feel like spitting out that. But all in all, in a lot of these videos, there's some things here and there that I don't like, but a lot, it sounds like they're trying to focus on the right things in general. They're never going to hit the mark exactly where everybody wants it. I think it sounds like more times than not, they're at least focusing on the correct things in this type of stuff. So here they're putting out one of these videos like every other day. So I think I might do more videos like this. If you like it, make sure you hit the like button, subscribe up to the channel. I'm trying to get to 50,000 subscribers before the end of the year. And I'm going to be making Diablo 2 Resurrected content and then eventually a ton of Diablo 4 content when that game gets closer to launch. So hey, peace out, fellas, and keep slaying.